Today I'm going to play the Japanese Koto. Koto is a word that they used in Japan for every Japanese stringed instrument, and it had to be a little bit more defined than that. It was introduced to Japan from China in the Nara period, 710 to 784. It's made of paulownia wood. The first version had 5 strings, then it had 12 strings, and when it was introduced to Japan, then it became the 13-stringed instrument that it is today. Koto was generic for all the Japanese stringed instruments, and over time, the definition of koto could not describe the wide variety of all of these stringed instruments, so the meanings changed. The azumagoto or yamatogato was called the wagon, the kin no koto was called the kin, the so no koto was called the so, or the koto. And this koto originates from the gakoso, which was used in Japanese court music. It was popular among the wealthy. It was considered a romantic instrument, and some literary and historical records indicate solo pieces for koto existed centuries before the music of the solo koto genre was even established. In Japanese literature, it was used as imagery. In the tales of Genji, Genji falls deeply in love with a mysterious woman who he has never seen before after he hears her playing the koto from a distance. So there's lots of history, lots of fun things to know. I want to show you how I tune this, and then I want to show you an actual Japanese piece that I'm going to play a little bit later. So the 13 strings lay flat on it when I store it, and then I put my little bridges, which are all individual bridges for every string. I put them depending on where I want to tune this to, and right now I'm tuning it to a G minor pentatonic scale. So I want to take this first string and I want to put the bridge way down here because I want this to be my lowest note. Okay, now I want that to be tuned to a D. Okay, then my next one I want to be tuned to a G. So then I have to pick up this next one and try to find a G. Now I could get my tuner out and all that, but I'm just going to do it by ear. And as I move these up towards me, then I stop when I finally find a G. And then I want this next one to be an A. So it's just a little bit further this way from that G. So if it's just a little flat, I can make it sharp. And I want this to be a B flat. That's a D, E flat, G, A, B flat. That's a little bit sharp, so I'm going to take a little bit down. I want this to be a D and an E flat and a G, and then the very last one I have way up here to have an A, so that when I play all of them, it's in a G minor pentatonic. Isn't that pretty? And you can hardly go wrong with this. Now, they play them with ivory. These are not ivory, these are some kind of a plastic, but the actual picks are ivory, and I had to go to great lengths to get them. And they go on your middle finger and your index finger, and I have a pick on my thumb. I do have a ivory pick for my thumb, but this one works a little bit better for what I'm going to do. So it just makes it a little bit sharper of a tone. Now the cool thing about kotos, and I want to show you what I got when I visited Japan. I got a little kind of a souvenir one that while I was in Japan, and I wish you could play it, but you can't play it. But it looks very similar to what the real thing is. And the bridges all came in a box that actually has the Japanese words on it, and I don't know what those mean, but I imagine that it tells me that all my bridges are in this box. Okay, and came with a little Japanese bag to put my finger picks in. And the story of this particular koto is kind of neat. I was asked by Saginaw Valley University to go to Japan with their the chorale and to sing with them. And then the instructor said, don't you know how to play any Japanese instruments? And I said, well, way a long time ago, I had a Japanese student in one of my elementary classes, and his mother was the cook in the school, who I had just become very dear friends with. And I had asked her to come to school when I found out that she had a Japanese instrument that she would come and play in Jack's music class. And it was so well taken that I decided to show all of my classes the koto. And she said, well, I can't come to all of your classes, but I can come to one and show you how to do one song. And I said, okay, let's do that. So she came to Jack's class, showed us a little bit about it. She didn't know a lot about the history, but then she played a song called Sakura, which is about cherry blossoms in the spring in Japan. And that was about the time when I was there, was in March, and the beautiful cherry blossoms were lovely. So Sakura then became the song that I learned. Now this was 35 years ago. So when Dr. Nasula asked me if I could play some kind of a Japanese instrument, and I said, well, 35 years ago, I played Sakura on my friend's koto, and he said, oh, okay. So the next rehearsal, he had all of the sheets of music out for Sakura for a 60-voice choir and accompaniment koto. And I looked at him and I said, how am I going to play a koto when my friend is long gone and nobody knows what a koto is, let alone where to find one? He said, you'll find something. So I got on the internet, and this was quite a while ago, and I found a gal down by Detroit that was mentioned in some of the koto things in Michigan. And I called her up and said, this is what happened, and can you help me? And she said, yes, come to my house. So I went down to her house. Her name is Alice. And when I walked in the door, she had me take my shoes off and put on her Japanese slippers, because that's what they do. And she was born and raised in California of Japanese immigrants from the Second World War. So Alice and I spent the afternoon together, and I took a whole notebook down, took copious notes as to how to tune it and all this kind of thing, because I had been told that when we get to Japan, I will have a koto for you to play at each of our concerts. And I said, good, but what do I do here to practice? He said, you'll think of something. So I told Alice that I needed to write all these notes down, and then she worked with me as far as figuring out. And as soon as she started playing koto and Sakura, and her music was all in Japanese, and it was all written down, and she had to read it, I think, from the right to the left, and the Japanese figures were going down. And I watched her, just fascinated by what she did. And after she was done, she says, now you try it. So as soon as I found the right note, everything kind of fell back into place, and I remembered how to play the basic melody of that song. And she looked at me and said, you haven't played this for 35 years? I said, well, no. And she said, well, that's pretty good, because I had to read the music. So she gave me this music of Sakura, and just so that I could have it, and I'll show you. It has a picture, it was black and white, of a gal playing the koto, and then it had the notes, which I can read, but then it had the Japanese words underneath. So I brought it home and was hoping. I used my harp with rehearsals, and then 12 days before we left for Japan, I panicked, and I said, Alice, I need some help again. She said, oh, come down again, come down again. So Russ and I went down, and we spent another wonderful afternoon with her, and she came to the door, and when she did, she said, I have a surprise for you. And she went down her basement, and she came back up with this, and she said, I forgot. I was given this a long time ago, and I don't have any need for it, so I want to give it to you. So I was so blessed by having one of my own, mostly because I could practice for 12 days before we left for Japan, and I would be able to practice with the choir. The scariest part was knowing that in Japan we were going to play at a university in Kyoto, and they have a Koto professor who actually teaches Koto, and I thought, uh-oh, what am I going to do when I meet somebody that really knows what they're doing? So I thought, okay, well, I'll play it like I play it, and we'll see what happens. So tuned it up. We went to Japan, and the day of the concert at the university, I was taken by a translator to meet the Koto instructor. And when she came down the hall, she had a kimono on. She had two students that were 1 foot behind her on either side. And she couldn't speak any English, I couldn't speak any Japanese. But what I wanted her to know, I wanted to thank her for letting me use her beautiful, beautiful, highly decorated koto for the concert. And I wanted to thank her for that. And when she heard that I was going to play her koto and that I was the one, she and her students all were very, very polite. And I told her thank you. And she mainly just let me know that she was very pleased. So we played the concert, and afterwards I thought, uh-oh, what am I going to hear from this koto instructor? And I didn't have a translator after the concert, and I came around the corner, and here she was coming with her two students again. And I smiled at her, and I bowed, and she was like this, like very, very, so I could tell that I had done an okay job, and I'm sure she could have given me a lot of instruction.